web was built to be free and open. You pay for it with your websites you pay for. The people that are serving you pay for it with their servers and their bandwidth. You pay for it with your internet connection. We're getting more internet connectivity. We're getting more bandwidth, not less. Now, under Internet 2, one facet of that plan, Comcast, Time Warner, others are doing it right here in Texas. Comcast is doing it in New York. The two major companies have announced 2 weeks ago in Canada that they're going to decide what sites you visit, and they're only going to allow a couple thousand sites. It is already just the vast majority of the internet, and so your computer becomes a glorified cable system with only a few thousand websites that you can visit. Now, we told you years ago this was going to happen because we could read the minutes of the Internet 2 meetings they've had in London, that they've had in Tokyo, that they've had in Austin, Texas, they've had in Chicago, San Francisco. It's a consortium of private corporations, universities, and government, and DARPA, and other foreign governments. And they always announce at the beginning that, quote, the Internet is dead. And they say they're going to not fix the old hubs of the Internet. They're going to let those degrade. They say that's their right to do that. They also want the authorization by the federal government and the FCC. This is happening. This is coming down now. This has been declared. That Comcast just got told Friday that they have to stop doing what they're doing, filtering out the majority of the web, and they are saying they're going to disregard the FCC. They don't have that regulatory power.
We've mentioned a couple of times on the show about both France's and the UK's radical new plans to crack down on illegal file sharing. This time, democratic, gadget-crazy, forward-thinking Japan has surprised everyone by proposing new internet regulations that would require Japanese ISPs to filter content that is considered harmful. A government panel wants to have the new laws passed in Parliament by 2010. Apparently, the open dissent allowed by the internet these days needs to be reined in, but not censored. Although it sounds an awful lot like censorship to me. Interestingly, there doesn't seem to be much opposition to this proposal at the moment, although Japanese bloggers are definitely worried, as categories like religion and political activity will be filtered out in the proposal. By opposing a system that would give your ISP the right to openly issue warnings and then eventually cut you off, you could end up supporting a closed system where everything is kept undercover.
Well, Congressman, we're gearing up to educate the public peacefully. Meanwhile, the authoritarians, in all their major white papers, Defense Department, Ministry of Defense in England, they admit they're gearing up to counter the people who don't want to go into bondage and third world serfdom in this whole high-tech overlay. And so clearly the enemy of liberty understands that and is gearing up with propaganda, militarily, police-wise, to oppress the people. Can you speak to that in this latest example of where they've just announced without warrants they're going to seize everybody's computers? They already started it at the border and send them off for months for them to download the contents of your laptop or your iPhone. They're having, quote, private corporations who are sharing the data. I mean, it's a race towards Orwell.
Yeah, and it's always, for good reasons. I mean, somebody coming into this, they start with the borders, and they say, well, you might be a terrorist, so we have to know what's in everybody's computer. So it's always playing on this, we're going to take care of you. But just think of all these lists and ID badges and everything else that they want to have, national ID cards. It's always done to keep out the illegals. And yet, at the same time, we know that they're not very serious about that. Maybe we ought to do better at the borders to keep illegals out. But if we have too many fences, it may be that those fences are going to be used to keep us all in. And the border, since I don't believe them being very serious about protecting our borders, every time they pretend to protect the borders, I get very worried. And this whole idea that they're going to seize computers at the border without a search warrant, I mean, we're in for a lot of trouble because everything is on people. I mean, there are so many databases in Washington. Maybe the only saving grace will be that they'll have so much information they won't be able to keep up with it, and it won't be very efficient. But in the meantime, they make a lot of mistakes. Just think about the list they have now on suspected terrorists. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people on that list. Once your name gets on there, you can't get it off. So much abuse and so much distrust that exists from this.
We need listeners to understand this is happening. This is coming down now. This has been declared. Another way they're attacking is, quote, the government's going to offer everyone free broadband wireless in Western Europe, in the United States, in South Korea, in Singapore, and many other countries. Quote, free. You're paying for it through tax money, and then they are demanding that anyone in that area who is taking the free broadband basically click on an agreement waiving their rights to be tracked, to be traced, to be controlled. So see, they're just making the new internet where you'll have to have a sub-website on one of their major websites. There's only going to be 100 of them under Internet 2, and then no more Infowars.com. It'll be MySpace/Infowars.com, and they can restrict your bulletins, shut you down, delete you, ban you. You see, we have to recognize we're as bad or worse than China, and now they've got congressional hearings talking about shutting down our free speech.
You have government dictating content policy, which, by the way, we have a big First Amendment problem. Whoever's in charge of government is going to determine what is fair under a so-called fairness doctrine. Will websites, will bloggers have to give equal time or equal space to opposing views rather than letting the marketplace of ideas determine that?
We need to desperately get other media outlets, alternative outlets that have been blocked to report on this. We need to make a big stink out of this. If we lay down to this, this sets a precedent.
I mean, MySpace admitted to the fact that we were on a censorship list. At first they said it was a technical error, then later when it happened again, we got a screenshot of one of the administrators admitting that PrisonPlanet.com links were being censored because the website was on a blacklist.
Paul Watson you get on PrisonPlanet.com from Communist China. But in England, on, quote, free government internet systems, is Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com are completely banned. But not just us. Almost every alternative media site, even mainline alternative sites.
And London libraries and many hospitals as well. It's blocked everywhere. But, I mean, even to see mildly critical websites like Think Progress get blocked just underlines how desperate they are to blacklist any kind of alternative information.
They are moving against us now. Everybody has to stick together or we're all going to hang separate because we're on the verge of exposing their state-sponsored terrorism, their fake global warming hype, their global taxes, all of it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's happening now. We have the power, because the listeners, to sabotage their criminal operations. This is life and death. 60+% down in newspaper readership. TV's plunging in ratings. The mainstream media is fully discredited. They're falling apart. They've got to do this, folks. They are coming. They're chopping up the web right now. We can do a lot about this, ladies and gentlemen. When Comcast and Time Warner and a few others, when they're able to do that, that sets a precedent, and then all the other majors and then minors can implement that as well. You have to boycott and protest it and speak out against it early on. Now is the time.